All right. Another live stream of this game. That's right. Um, yep. What is this episode? 69? Is it? It is 69 of the same thing. Yep. Yep. So, the plan was for me to live stream this last night, Saturday night, but I couldn't. Because in a future video, you will see a new change in my room. And that is a new ceiling fan. Yep. I need a new ceiling fan. So, and I was going to go live earlier today, but I couldn't. So, here I am. It's already past 9:30 for me, but oh well. So yeah, that's why there was no video or live stream yesterday. So, anyway, welcome to another live stream of American Truck Simulator. We are on the road to the 8th anniversary of this game, which is on February 2nd, Friday. This upcoming Friday will be the 8th anniversary of this game. So, you know I'm going to do a special edition of this game on that date. So, yeah. I'm going to try and do some highlight videos, but I can't promise you that. It just depends if I'm in the mood to do it and if I have the time. So, but I got some time to spare on this game. Yep. Alright. So, yep, you know what I'm going to do. Listening to more football podcasts. Because I'm still not done with that playlist. Eventually I will. So that's why I'm doing another long delivery with my new truck. That's right. For those of you that forgot that I got a new truck, it's a Mack Anthem. I really like it. I think I like it more than my previous one. My previous one is a Kenworth. I forgot the model, but that one it's really good too, but I can't really use it anymore because it's damaged too much. Unless if I like repair the whole thing or buy another one. Which I have not done yet, but that's okay. Alright, so this stream will probably be about 4 hours. Yeah, that long. Because the plan was for me to stream this for a while. So it's going to be a late night edition. Okay. And yeah, that is it. So I'm going to start right now. Not going to waste any more time. I already got the video ready. Yep, more videos to listen to of the football news from the past couple of weeks. Alright, let's start. Another long delivery. Episode 69. Let's go.
Bill Belichick is a head coaching candidate that can be interviewed like everyone else. And I couldn't believe when I saw the tweet from the Atlanta Falcons confirming what we were all thinking. But there it is. We have interviewed Bill Belichick for our head coach opening, and there he is in his Patriots gear. This may have been the day that he came back 28-3. I don't know. It looks more recent than that photo. But wow. If I had told you on that night, when probably Sarah Tiana was inconsolable, right, and everyone else in your life
very rough. We were all very happy.
Okay.
Except for her.
Anyone in Atlanta, that one day you're going to have Bill Belichick interviewed for the job. And I got to say this. I don't think Bill's interviewing unless he knows that he's got a real shot here. He's not going to just, although I don't, like, what does a Bill Belichick
I don't know.
coaching interview sound like? What does it look like?
And Donovan Dodd had a great tweet last night. He was like, just admit it. Bill Belichick interviewed you.
Right? I mean, like, you tell me what facilities you're going to, like, I need to know how committed, like, what's the ownership. Like, he knows Arthur Blank. I'm sure he's had conversations with him, but never as in depth as the one that he probably had then, in the interview. Does he come with, like, because knowing him, he's as prepared as they come. Did he break down, like, this is what I think, I would do?
Yeah, has he been
Does
watching
he do that?
Falcons tape since last Thursday?
You know what I mean? Like,
guys, all he does is he has a little Halliburton, right? And he walks into his job interview, he sits down, they say, hi to meet you, nice to meet you, nice to meet you. He opens it up like Marcellus Wallace's briefcase.
Does it glow gold?
And he pulls out 6 little objects and he sticks them on the table. And he said, that's my resume.
Silver?
And he sits back and he's like, yo, what up, though? Like
that's
what it is.
Right?
Yeah. Like Pat Riley's got the Crown Royal bag and he just takes them out.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
that's all he needs to do.
It can't be like, hey, I've looked at the route tree concepts around here and I've got some issues, or defensively, I like these guys.
That
but
guy
these
number
guys,
7, Robinson, I'm going to give him the football. Hired.
Is that what it is?
I don't know.
It's funny. The best tweet that I saw from the Ringer, right?
Nora Princiani.
Nora Princiani. She's like, she tweeted out a quote that would be said by anybody interviewing a candidate for a job. Can you tell us about a time you faced significant odds and how you overcame them?
It's funny.
It's fun time. There's 28-3. I was in the Super Bowl once.
The Super Bowl. I mean, Houston. Wait, you might have been there.
Were you there?
I think I saw you.
Just in case you might not remember, this is what happened. Of all the teams,
I don't know,
he's interviewing with the first time out.
Yeah, I don't know why you guys seem surprised. Of course, why wouldn't you if you're them?
Well, I mean, again, if you're Arthur Blank, and again, he's 81, and I trust me, I don't say this as an ageist. No, Susie's Nana lived till she was 102 or 100, right? And we want people to live for as long as possible, and
But at 81,
but at 81, you're sitting here thinking, I need to win now, right? If you're talking about winning, it's all about marking of time, right? You're wondering about time.
Time passes.
And if you feel you've got a roster ready to win, and you decide I'm getting a new coach, and Bill Belichick does in fact pop free, and they may have been talking with one another, who knows, having a friend of a friend reach out to a friend of Arthur Blank who knows somebody who knows Arthur, and letting him know, like, if this happens, I'm interested. Are you interested? Check this box. And it actually does happen that the Patriots decide to let him go, and he's there. How do you not hire him? And of all the divisions that he would then go to and maybe try and win one post New England, it's the division Brady wound up in. Right? Nuts. You can't make it up. If I had told Sarah that night,
oh my gosh,
and James White got in the end zone, right?
I think she was probably blacked out at that point.
Hey, one day Belichick is going to consider coaching your team, and you are way into the idea. How do Falcons fans feel about this? They got to be all over it, right? Yeah?
I'm not sure. I think for Falcons fans, just her perspective, who's the quarterback next year? And I think that was probably Bill's, I would hope, one of his first questions. What's our quarterback situation?
Or do you think is he telling him? That's his point. It's just like, here are my trophies.
Is he going to go get Jimmy G?
I know, Justin Fields, which would be an interesting combination, right? For Justin Fields and Belichick.
Well, a type of quarterback Bill's never had before.
But somebody with questions. He's got 15 wins he needs for we'll keep hearing that about how many wins shy of the Don Shula coaching record he is, but he wants one more of those to take out of his Marcellus case.
He wants to get to Brady. He'll never admit it, but
oh, come on.
The fact that Tom's one ahead of him.
He wants to win one more.
He's got to eat at him.
Maybe the Brady stuff and the win stuff. He just wants to win one more. Just one more. Going out the door for Atlanta.
Or just for himself, probably.
For himself. I'm not saying he's doing it for a city,
Right.
but just for another franchise that he once upon a time prevented from winning one. So I'm like, I owe you one.
Yeah, but
you couldn't get one, I'll come and give it to you. And he upgraded
with Dallas, TJ. They built him a statue on the spot.
Oh man, a statue. That doesn't even seem like enough.
And that's the other point too, is that if you're Dallas and you're Philadelphia and he's out there, and you can
don't drag your feet on this. Like, what are you waiting for?
The problem with Dallas is, like you mentioned earlier, Rich, you let go of McCarthy. Now we have to replace a head coach and an OC.
A play call. Well, bring in Bill, bring in Bob, bring in Bill O'Brien, right?
Cliff Kingsbury.
McDaniels.
Cliff
Don't you
Kingsbury's out there.
think he'd bring McDaniels with him?
I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
He drafted Kingsbury once.
Josh McDaniels is a head coach? No, thank you. Josh McDaniels is an OC?
Very good.
How soon can I get him on the plane?
Mac Jones made the Pro Bowl with that.
Isn't it easy to be an OC when you've got Tom Brady as your quarterback?
Hey,
he did it with Mac Jones.
Jones. He did. Mac Jones looked terrific.
And the playoffs that year.
I know you didn't just bring up the Pro Bowl, and you're one of the people who sit there and goes, that doesn't even count because everyone just drops out.
There was a tweet from the Atlanta Falcons saying, we have interviewed Bill Belichick for our head coaching position.
What?
That happened.
Like, what timeline are we in? It's like
I don't
Back
know.
to the Future
Look at
2.
that.
Like, what is going on?
Look at that.
6 rings. Here's my resume.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What's an interview like? Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.
I think the Eagles' loss was infinitely more embarrassing. The Cowboys played badly. They were outcoached, they were outplayed, they were outschemed. But the one thing you never questioned watching that game or any games was they were playing their behinds off. They were trying as hard as they could. They were doing everything they could. They showed all the frustration you would want to see. They just lost. They just played badly. And that's not excusing anything. It's not letting anyone off the hook. And I definitely think, as Troy said, that there has to be some repercussion from that. I don't think you can just bring that group back and say, we'll just run it back next year and count on it being better. But I think the Eagles' loss was infinitely more embarrassing because they looked like a team that quit.
Yeah, the answer to the question is the Eagles. And candidly, that makes me seethe. Because as a person who has rooted for Philadelphia sports teams for the last 25 years, obviously results matter. Outcomes matter. But the thing that we care about the most is effort. The thing that we care about the most is you caring about the team as much as we do. If you look at throughout history, the players that we have enjoyed the most, rooted for the hardest, have not always been the best, but they have always been the bloodiest. And this team provided less in effort than any I can ever recall. And that includes rooting for 4-12 teams. That includes rooting for 76ers teams that were actively losing. Rooting for Phillies teams that over the course of a decade rebuilt and rebuilt again. This was a freaking playoff game. And the Buccaneers were running around in the Eagles secondary without being touched, or hardly being touched. And there was no emotion on the sideline. There was absolutely no there. There were Eagles fans that flew down to Tampa, and they deserve their money back. Because the effort that this team put in yesterday, and the effort that this team put in over the last 6 weeks is utterly humiliating. There is no leadership in that building. There is no leadership in that locker room. And I can't believe that a team that good a year ago, a team that talented, could possibly turn in that effort. It is completely embarrassing.
So I think that's exactly right.
I have only one question.
Which brings us to this. Would you rather witness a slow collapse or a sudden meltdown from your team? I think you would. I mean, you don't want to witness either one of them, but I think a slow to me, it's less about whether it happens suddenly or happens slowly than it is about the fact that it happened without heart. Like to follow up what you're saying, the thing you demand from your team, I've said many times over the course of my life, the only thing I think we have a right to demand from the players that we follow, that we root for, and that we support both emotionally and financially is that they appear to be all in, that they are as invested in this as we are, if not more so. And they didn't look that way. Now, look, I'm not accusing the players of not wanting to win, of all that stuff. I'm sure in their own way they were. But clearly, that was not a group that was all on the same page, that was all pulling the same direction of the rope, whatever the cliches are in there. And so you'd rather not witness that. I'd rather my team look awful, play badly. I'd much rather my team lose like the Cowboys than lose like the Eagles.
Yeah, you're right. You saw, every time the Cowboys play a game at home, you see the video on Twitter of fans rushing in the gates to be able to get there early. And Bubba flew to this game and was prepared for it with such incredible.
And for all we know, going to live the rest of his life there.
But he was so enthusiastic about it. Greeny, I was texting with buddies of mine before the game started yesterday, and once it was sort of starting to get away from us, we were texting together, and one of them said, this is a playoff game, mind you. One of them said, yeah, well, I flipped over to the Flyers game. This was a playoff game.
Yeah.
The Eagles fans were rooting against the team because they wanted to be put out of their misery. It became an old Yeller game. That's where this fan base was.
I took Marcus to my gym one time. I was a member of a club down here. I'm not anymore, but I was a member of a club down here that had a workout room and it had a lunch, had a restaurant. And so Marcus Spears, we did the show and I invited him. He came over. We worked out together. We showered and steamed together. And then we went to have lunch together. And I was watching him, we get there and I'm like, let's go, let's do this. And I watched the weight that he's picking up. And I was like, I'm just going to do cardio today. It's just,
it's my light day.
It's just my cardio day today. And I was on the elliptical minding my own business for 25 minutes and called it a day.
I would be fine doing cardio next to almost anybody, but I'm not lifting with Jeff Saturday or Marcus Spears or anyone like that.
Yeah.
Damian Woody.
No, or Damian Woody would be lifting both Jeff Saturday and Marcus Spears. He could lift them. He's so ridiculously strong.
These people, people don't realize how big football players actually are, and you and I have the privilege of working with them. They're all bigger than anyone that you know.
Yeah, however big you think they are, they're bigger than that.
Do they need to make a change that significant? Does Jerry Jones need to change coaches?
Yes. And G, it really has nothing to do. I've sat on the network and talked about Mike McCarthy winning 12 games 3 years in a row. That's not something to bat an eye at or something to walk away from easily. I think the Green Bay game just signified how unprepared Dallas was, which was shocking to me. Unprepared mentally as far as being ready to play, unprepared schematically. And think about this. Matt LaFleur walked in there with a first-time starting quarterback and went up and down the football field on this Dallas Cowboy team. Now, the unfortunate part is, as a head coach, you take the brunt of that blame. And Mike McCarthy, at times, I've defended because we've talked about his job, and he's done a tremendous job in the regular season. But it's all about circumstance and context. And what Troy said, there's an opposite argument to that. And obviously, that's a part of the argument which he made, which is true. Yeah, you might not want to go through a new situation or a new coaching staff, or you might not want to move forward. The bottom line is this. If Jerry is willing to give Bill Belichick the authority that you need to have in order to run an organization without the interference of the owner becoming a polarizing figure, and it just becomes about winning, it's the best move you can make. Because the one thing we've always made synonymous with Bill Belichick is that his team is going to be prepared. And he would have a quarterback that's a significant upgrade over what he's had. But when it comes to Mike McCarthy, which was hard for me to say because I'm a Mike McCarthy fan, the unpreparedness of the Dallas Cowboys in the playoff game against Green Bay is all about coaching, unfortunately. And that's him and Dan Quinn. But Dan Quinn is not the head coach.
That's exactly right. And look, none of this is personal. This has nothing to do with Mike McCarthy. He's, I'm sure, a terrific human being. We sit here and we judge the jobs that people do. And in that situation, you are judged by what happens in your final game. When it goes that badly, the judgment is sometimes going to go in this direction. So Kmart, look, I'm not a detective, but sometimes I put a few things together. Jerry Jones has had ample opportunity.
Yes.
If there was no question Mike McCarthy was coming back as his coach, he's had ample opportunity to say that. That game was on Sunday. Today is already Wednesday. He hasn't done it. That's one thing, too. Bill Belichick is out there. I will be shocked, absolutely shocked, if there has not been at least some communication, back channel, all that kind of stuff, right?
Hit me on the two-way. You already know those conversations. Yes.
Whatever the lingo is, are we hitting me on the two-way?
No, we don't say that now. No.
Okay.
That's don't say that now.
Whatever it is we're saying. Is that the breaker 19? I see. Whatever it is we're doing here. I'm going back to Smoking and the Bandit, which is before anyone else but me in this conversation was born. Anyway, the point I'm making is, I'm telling you right now that what Marcus is saying is exactly what's happening. And Troy Aikman said it too. Bill Belichick to the Cowboys makes too much sense not to happen.
I love Belichick to the Cowboys. However, it is clear that the Cowboys have not been good enough. We understand that. But if you're Jerry Jones, if you think you can get Bill Belichick, then you get Bill Belichick. But if you can't, who else are you getting? I think it's easy to say Mike McCarthy's not good enough, but you got to have the answer that comes after that. Who's his replacement? Now, one thing I understand what Troy is saying, the fact that, I don't think this is going to happen. I wouldn't expect it to happen. I think Jerry Jones has been loyal to a fault sometimes. He's kept coaches longer than he probably should have. I understand his age, and I understand right now would he want to go through another coaching regime and a search and all that. Those are a lot of unknowns, but he might say, this isn't the guy, and I can't waste any more time seeing if this will work.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think, listen, when you think about McCarthy, and I've said this, I mean, to move on, to fire people is easy.
Yes.
Hiring is the most difficult,
Yes.
right? And unless you know you're going to hire someone who's better than Mike McCarthy, is going to give you more than 12 wins a game, which I'm saying is going to be very difficult, you better have Belichick. And so the issue for Belichick, I think he would be fantastic in Dallas. I think it would work with Jerry. I think all of those things. My question would be, what's the holdup, right? If you're pursuing it now and you're having the conversations, which they're being had, like whatever the rules are, whatever they're not, rest assured you got billionaires, they're going to get a deal done, right? Like they don't wait around. So there has to be conversations being had. I would just say the hesitation to say, hey, I'm with Mike McCarthy would lend me to believe that something more is absolutely
That's exactly right. Conversations are taking place. And look, I'm not a lawyer, but I easily could have been one. And the point of it is that the first thing they teach you in law school is you never ask a question you don't already know the answer to. You don't fire a coach unless you already have the next one ready to go. Those conversations somewhere along the line, Marcus, are taking place. I think that is standard operating procedure.
Absolutely.
There's just sort of the rules of the road here. So, Marcus, to me, Belichick to the Cowboys makes all the sense in the world. I don't think it's about control over personnel. I don't think it's about anything else. But Jerry Jones can hand Bill Belichick the two things he wants. He wants a roster that is ready to win right now, and he has a roster that has a chance to win a championship. He can get his 15 wins, he can win his title, and he can go off into the sunset as the greatest coach of all time. It makes too much sense from both sides.
But let's also remember, and I went off about this on Monday Night Countdown. Let's also remember who the owner of the Dallas Cowboys are.
Yeah.
We've said his name for 100 times. How much are you willing to move aside and allow Bill Belichick to handle this organization like we saw him handle the New England Patriots? Because when we just start talking about Bill Belichick on the field, we all know what can happen. We all seen him have a tremendous amount of success. We've never seen Bill Belichick deal with an owner that's going to do an interview before he walks in the locker room. We've never seen him deal with an owner that's going to be on the radio all week long leading into a game. And I'm telling you, I came from this coaching tree. I played for Nick Saban and I played for Bill Parcells. I played for Bill Parcells when he was in Dallas. There were a lot of things he did not like about how the organization was ran, and he did not have control over changing it. So as much as we talked about the coaches, I was there with Bill Parcells. I was there with Wade Phillips. I was there with Jason Garrett. I believe Jerry Jones thought every one of those moves was inching him closer to a Super Bowl. But guess what never changed? Jerry Jones. And that's the thing. We could relent about Bill Belichick. We could talk about it. We know he's a great coach. What is he willing to deal with?
Here's what I would say about the Belichick conversation. This ain't forever. He ain't coaching 24 more years, bro. This dude's gonna be here maybe 2 or 3. If he gets that victory and they have a team, it does not have to be a marriage, bro. He's just dating, right? He's literally dating them. That's all you're doing, right? You got 2 years in this thing, bro. Pack it in, bring the next one in. Let's go get it.
Hold on.
That to me makes the most sense. He don't want to be coaching forever either.
Something needs to be said. Swagoo, I love you, and you're right. But let me ask you a question. Is Jerry Jones doing an interview the reason that Jordan Love carved up that defense the other day, the reason they couldn't stop the run, the reason that Dak looked like he had never played a big game before in his entire life? Let's stop blaming Jerry Jones for the Cowboys not being prepared to play the one game of the season that mattered the most, Marcus. Go ahead.
No, you're right. You're right when it comes to being prepared. When we sat on your set all year long after Leighton Vander Esch got hurt, did we see a linebacker get signed by the Dallas Cowboys?
No.
Do we see a running back?
Who's the general manager?
Yeah. So they
Who's the
should have
general
done
manager?
Yeah, that's Jerry. But that's not what we're talking about.
Gee,
Because
I'm
other
not-
teams,
gee,
GMs don't.
there-
Yeah, go
there's a
ahead.
lot of there's a lot of blame to go around, and you along with other people I've had this conversation with. Gee, just go back and look at the last 4 or 5 Super Bowl champions. Look at how aggressive they've been about getting championship caliber players. Dallas has stood pat. They signed Stephon Gilmore. Great. Stephon Gilmore is a really good cornerback. Did we think that was going to put them over the hump as winning the Super Bowl? No. I have said on this show time and time again and told y'all that Dallas roster is an issue when you get to the point of winning the Super Bowl. If we're just talking about winning games, phenomenal. They are a really good roster. I'm not saying they suck, but when we get to the point of winning Super Bowls, there is a difference in what teams that have won them has done and what Dallas has done.
We roll on. It's all about the coaching carousel. Hey, Jeff Saturday, which opening right now, or potential opening, if you're Bill Belichick, is the most attractive to you?
All right, I'm Dallas, but I'm getting off of Dallas because we talk about Dallas. How about the Atlanta Falcons, my hometown? How about that, Bill? Come on back. You just interviewed. They got great skill position. Defense made huge. Terry Fontenot's done a good job of getting them out of salary cap purgatory or hell, wherever they were before that. Listen, this could be a great setup. You got to bring in a quarterback. That's the only part I'm a little nervous about. But being Atlanta, let's go, Bill.
They've interviewed Bill. They've interviewed Harbaugh and many other candidates. Be interesting to watch. Kmart, let's talk about Harbaugh. He has interviewed with Atlanta and the Chargers. What's the better job for him?
Jeff Saturday was so close, but actually it's the Atlanta Falcons for everything that Jeff Saturday just said. Listen, they got the skill players, they got a defense. I understand they don't have a quarterback, but who can you trust to identify young talent, coach them up, and build a winner? Jim Harbaugh.
Hire Belichick and Harbaugh in Atlanta.
Would roll it back if that were my situation. I am not moving on unless I know I am for sure getting better. I think Bill Belichick stands a separate line than all the others we were trying to talk about.
I mean, there's a part of me that disagrees with you so strongly, I'm going to jump out of my chair. Go ahead, Marcus.
It still becomes about the groceries as well, though. Like, as far as Bill Belichick, we saw Bill Belichick be awful. Getting people on offense. We just not going to gloss over the fact that he did have Matt Patricia and Joe Judge run his offense.
That's right.
And then brought in Bill O'Brien. Like, we're not going to gloss over that. We're not going to gloss over the fact that he was the general manager and was awful at bringing people in. They had one summer where they spent a lot of money and wasn't able to put it together. So that part has to be mentioned. So in line with that, Jeff and Kmart, Jerry Jones is the general manager.
That's right.
I think it needs to be a change there as well. So this is not just as simple as saying we go plug and play Bill Belichick. There are going to need to be some philosophical changes about how you are trying to go about winning a Super Bowl. And that gets back to what I've been talking about with Jerry Jones. So I get it. Bill Belichick is obviously going to have his teams ready to play, and you have to have players to have success. But there's also going to have to be a change in who's deciding who we're going to bring in. Because it's Jimmy's and Joe's when you get to the playoffs. That's what it comes down to. So leave that out there as well. It's not just a coaching change and everything is fixed in Dallas.
And I would say when you look at Dallas's defense, like what Quinn does and what Belichick, they're completely different, philosophically, right? And so what you saw in Dallas over the last, however many months, is they couldn't stop the run, right? For the season, they get bludgeoned up the middle. They can't go. Bill Belichick is not going to have little defense a lot. I played against him 13 years. I'm telling you right now, he's going to go get some freaking road grading, grown freaking men that have been shaving since 12 years old, that weigh 350 and sit right in the middle, and they ain't giving up no run game now. I'm just going to let you know, it is a different mentality. The difference I think that I see with Bill Belichick is Micah Parsons. He coached Lawrence Taylor. You're telling me this don't know how to create mismatches?
Yeah.
There are things that he could do that will uplift this team, and it really will be kind of what they talked about. Defense can control things, but there will be significant changes, especially on that side of the ball. The style of play will not be, they will be much more physical. And I think for the Cowboys offensively, that's where Belichick will also help because he understands complementary football. The first 3 years they won the Super Bowl, y'all, it wasn't because of Brady. Now they became an offensive team.
Dan Quinn, Obviously, Mike McCarthy. Dak Prescott holds as much at fault as those two guys. And I don't care what anybody said. Well, the defense gave up 41 points. Great. Well, go score 41 points then. Because that's what we are asking. We're asking when it's not perfect. That's why I was so enamored with how these conversations would go after this playoff loss about Dak in particular. I said it all season long. Can you respond when it's not going well? Can we walk away saying you are the reason the Dallas Cowboys was able to win that game when everything was going haywire and the defense couldn't get a stop and nobody could stop anybody, and were you the guy? We saw Josh Allen do it. These conversations that have revolved around this year, and why do we talk about Josh Allen and not talk about that? Because we saw Josh Allen continue to respond in a playoff situation to Patrick Mahomes. Back to back to back. Back to back. We don't see that from Dak. We see interceptions for pick sixes. We see a blank stare on his face like he don't know what is going on. It looks like the moment is too big for him. This is a consistent now response from Dak Prescott when he gets into the playoffs. And the Tampa performance was great. That was great, right? And I don't take that away from it. But these are the situations where everybody's like, bro, we don't know who you are when you get here. Can you raise the level one or two times? Because that's what it takes to get to a Super Bowl. So to me, Dak is at as much fault. This game was 14-0 for a long time. And I guarantee you, if you come down as a quarterback and you make a few plays, that the tone and tenor of this game changes for the Green Bay Packers. Dak is at as much fault as Dan Quinn and Mike McCarthy.
I agree with you, Debo. I really do. Here's my question, though. When I look at these notes, viewer asked, is Dak Prescott a guy or the guy? And you said, hey, man, quarterbacks like this don't grow on trees, bruh. And that is my question. I am with you. When we look at the Cowboys, how are we going to upgrade at head coach, at quarterback? We know an upgrade exists head coaching-wise in Bill Belichick. Who's the answer at quarterback? What if Dak is not the answer and you still think he's the guy? What is the better solution for the Cowboys? It's easy. Again, it's easy to say get rid of the quarterback, but who else?
Yeah, but the guy, and I thought I explained it clearly, the guy is predicated on what's available.
Yeah.
The guy changes, right? Like we saw situations, we've seen these things in the league. You would have said Jared Goff was the guy in Los Angeles until Matt Stafford became available. You would have said that. So it's not necessarily about Dak Prescott being the guy overall that you would want above anybody else. But supply and demand matters in this league. So he's the guy for Dallas.
Is my question.
No, they can't get anybody. No one is saying they can't.
Right.
But the point is, so now you're going to pay the guy $60 million a year, and you're going to pay CeeDee Lamb, and you're going to pay Micah Parsons, and you're going to go out and play with three guys on your team. You're basically going to have a roster that has three players on it, and that's going to be the end of it. I mean, you said it before. You're as loyal as your options. They don't have better options. No one's arguing they do, but it isn't necessarily not a problem just because it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I think part of when you read into this game, and I said this is the first game that I felt like I would literally lay at the feet of a better team losing to a team that I didn't think was as good, right? From the McCarthy regime or whatever. I thought, now, you can talk about Dak's performance, throwing the interceptions. He should not have. The one interception by Alexander was an incredible play, right? Like the pick six was boneheaded, but the first pick was. CeeDee Lamb had two drops early, right? Like there were some other things going on. There was some other frustrations. Like
Jeff,
I think people think about like offensive football being played in a vacuum. It's not played that way. And when your defense is getting run all over, and now you're putting more pressure on the offense. So now we're going to talk about let's go elevate it. And I hear that argument about Dak Prescott. He can't elevate the same way a C.J. Stroud elevated his team, or a Josh Allen elevates his team. Here's the other part. We're talking about Lamar Jackson. They're the number one seed. Last time they're number one, he's 1-4, so he hadn't quite made that minimum mark. But it's not. So be careful. Be careful when you start talking about where are we going to go, because I know a lot of people who passed on Lamar Jackson this offseason, and now the dude's going to be the MVP this season, right? So everything can change by the quality of things that are happening around you. And I think a running back actually would have helped Dak be better. Go look at Green Bay's game plan, y'all. It wasn't just Jordan Love throwing the ball all over the field. It was because of what happened first. It all matters. It can't just be one guy that you're trying to single out.
Quick final word, Marcus, go.
Jeff, I would be with you if it wasn't like 3 years we watched.
I get you.
I would be with you. And I've been there with Dak Prescott. And let's not forget too, bro. Like think about what you would be saying if Devondre Campbell doesn't drop a red zone interception. Think about how you would change what you just said in that particular situation. Bro, he doesn't raise to the level you need to in playoff games consistently enough for you to think that Dallas can win a Super Bowl. Just take Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff game. After that game was played, those were two quarterbacks that raised their level against going tit for tat. Because if one of them doesn't play well, their team gets beat probably more handily than we saw. Dude, look, it's been enough for me to acknowledge that he shrinks in those moments.
No, it's the right thing to say. And he was playing against a bad defense. I mean, we're allowed to say it. Green Bay's defense gave up 30 points to Carolina 3 weeks ago. All right.
Jim Harbaugh interviewed with the Chargers, yesterday interviewed with the Atlanta Falcons while negotiating a new contract extension with Michigan. Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports columnist, New York Times best-selling author, had some nice juicy details about this with what Jim Harbaugh is trying to put in his contract, the language. Good morning, Dan. Enlighten our audience on what Harbaugh is trying to put in this new contract extension.
Well, I think, look, if he gets offered the right job in the NFL, he's going to go to the NFL. I think that's a fair expectation. So this is really a backup plan. I'm not really sure there's anything Michigan could do other than some absurd financial amount or something that could keep Jim Harbaugh if he finds the intriguing offer. But there's certainly the backup plan. So it's, 6 years, $11.5 million guaranteed base with some performance bonuses that would make him either certainly the highest paid in the Big Ten, perhaps in the whole country. Some of these new deals, we're not sure all the details. There are certain clauses that are unusual. He basically gets immunity from punishment for either of the two current NCAA investigations that are going on. One into whether he misled investigators who were looking into a bunch of level 2 violations, and then of course the Connor Stallion situation with the advanced scouting and the sign stealing. There would be a set deal that in future violations there'd be kind of a matrix defined if anything else comes up, of series of fines, really laying out some different things that could happen in the future. He's trying to not execute this deal. Even if he were to agree to an extension right now, it wouldn't go into place until February 15th, which is pretty smart, because right now his buyout, if a team wants to hire him away from Michigan, they owe Michigan $1.5 million. That dropped on January 11th. The new deal would maybe be about $4 million. But if it's not executed until February 15th, then that would pretty much be the entire NFL cycle, coaching carousel cycle. So, he would still be on the lower deal. Different ways that he could potentially be terminated. I mean, he's trying to get everything in there that he possibly can. It's a really unique situation because rarely do we have a coach win a national championship, also be under 2 NCAA violation cases, and have all this NFL interest at the same time. So, as with everything with Jim Harbaugh, it is its own unique contract job search situation.
But I think Bill Self has similar language in his contract at Kansas.
He does, and that might be the path here. Bill Self wasn't about to leave for the NBA while he was working that out, though. But Bill Self is essentially unfireable, and it gets to where if you're going to fire Harbaugh for cause, it would go to like a 3. It wouldn't be the AD who could do it. It would be a 3-panel arbitration, kind of stuff they do with presidents of universities. It's pretty creative to get as much protection for Jim as you possibly can going forward. And a quick aside, the NCAA has got a new system in place called strict liability for head coaches, so that if anybody on your staff, any assistant coach, any staffer violates an NCAA rule, the head coach is now responsible. And I think what Jim is trying to do here, and I think it's going to become commonplace for all coaches, is that may be true for the NCAA, but I can't be fired for that. I can't. Normally, if there's an NCAA violation, the language would say that is cause for termination. I think what all these coaches are going to say is that's not fair. There's 100 people working in this football office. There's 25 working in this basketball. If somebody does something somewhere, I can't lose my $10 million a year job. So he's a little cutting edge on that one, that the coaches aren't too in favor of this new NCAA standard of punishment.
If Jim Harbaugh goes to the NFL, is he obligated to talk to the NCAA with the investigation into Michigan's sanctions?
He is not. So once you're not an NCAA coach, you are free to walk away, and they mercifully do not have the power to compel testimony. I don't think we need that out of NCAA investigators.
Is it Harbaugh wants to go to the NFL? I'm trying to figure out, if I'm Michigan in this situation, like at what point do you say, we're going to move on here? Can they move on from Jim Harbaugh before Jim Harbaugh moves on from them?
He's 40-3 in the last 3 years. Just won the national title.
Yeah, but they won 6 games without him on the sideline.
They did, but it was they won half a national title in 1997, and the one before that was 1948. So Jim Harbaugh has a tremendous amount of support, certainly amongst the fans and boosters and the school. They want to keep him. But I agree with you. I think there's only so much you can do. Look, if you want to go to the Chargers, go to the Chargers. And look, there's 7 jobs open now. We could still get Dallas. We could still get Philly. Probably not Pittsburgh, we're hearing now, but you don't know. We're starting to get into real franchise. This isn't like, do you want to go to Carolina and lose and get fired in 2 years? These are real opportunities. He's already interviewed at 2 spots. So I kind of feel like if Jim Harbaugh can't get an NFL job this year, it's not going to happen. And if you're Michigan, you're kind of like, look, we'll pay you, we'll give you some stuff, we'll protect you, we've been behind you all the way. But to just walk away from them, they're not ready to do that. That's just the situation. 15-0 does a lot for your juice on campus.
What if you could place Jim Harbaugh in the NFL, knowing his personality? Where would you place him?
I think I don't know that his personality. I don't think it necessarily matters where. I think he has to have an owner that understands that he's not going to operate maybe quite like somebody else. But guy's a remarkable football coach, so I would just want him at a ready-made winner. I think if you could plug him in and he can create the culture and the staff,
but like Dallas, with
I don't know
Jerry
if Dallas
Jones
is a great idea. I think the Chargers would be great. There's not going to be a lot of media attention and all that. Put him in the middle of the circus, and he's going to become part of the circus if you keep him kind of just coaching football. I think one of Harbaugh's issues at Michigan, and the reason there's violation cases and stuff, he's not. From the outside looking in, and my guess in knowing people, he's not a manager of 100 people. He's a football coach, and he needs to coach football, not, well, what is this assistant doing? Am I on top of this staffer? What's this guy up to? That's not him. He needs to coach football and be focused on that. I think he'd be a great coach for the Chargers right now with a quarterback, but you got to put him in as a ready-made winner. And I think he's the kind of guy that maybe can take you to the next step. He certainly was, 4 years in San Francisco, 3 conference championship games, and 1 Super Bowl. He lost the Super Bowl on a goal line stand. He lost 1 conference championship game to the Giants in overtime. He lost another to Seattle on a remarkable pass breakup by Richard Sherman. Famous pass. I mean, he was as close as you're about to get for that 3-year stretch of winning a Super Bowl. Both those teams, I think, went on to win it. So he was a remarkable NFL coach. He's been a remarkable college coach, but he's going to move to his own his own beat, his own drummer, all of that stuff. You can't expect him to be anything other than Jim Harbaugh. You got to buy the whole package and hope it works out.
Great stuff, Dan. Good to check with you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan.
That's Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports columnist, New York Times best-selling author.
So, hey, Chris Brockman.
Hey.
Today's date, January 17th.
Yes.
2024.
Love it.
Is the day that you knew would come one day. The day that the New England Patriots announced the man who's coaching the team after Bill Belichick. His name is Gerard Mayo. Once upon a time, a drafted player in New England. Played his entire career in New England.
Belichick's last top 10 draft pick.
How about that?
Gerard Mayo.
Who knew he would be the one to succeed Bill Belichick as the HC of the NEP after a 24-year all-time great run? And this is what he had to say when being introduced as the new head coach there in replacing Bill Belichick.
Has had a lot of success over the years for a long time. There have been many teams that, they have one good year and then they're out for 3 years. One thing I learned from coaches and from Thunder is about just surrounding yourself with good people. Right? Surround yourself with good people. Now, as far as our staff and things like that, we're going to be good. We're going to be a lot better. Now, Bill always says this, managing expectations. For me, I'm not trying to be Bill. I'm not trying to be Bill. I think that Bill is his own man. If you can't tell by now, I'm a little bit different even up here. But what I will say is, the more I think about like the lessons that I've taken from Bill, hard work works, right? Hard work works, and that's what we're all about.
I like the answer.
Okay, great. Let's go.
Hard work works.
Is that different than do your job?
It's his version of it.
Brother of do your
Honestly.
job?
I got a quick question.
Do your job to hard work works.
Great.
Kind of dig it.
Do we replace Bill in our bathroom with Gerard Mayo with the new saying now?
Well,
or
I
do we
mean,
just-
there's a sign in our
Yeah, I think
restroom
we,
here that says it's over the commode. This was my idea. I'm very proud of it.
It's funny.
It says, do your job.
Or
And
do we
it's
just
a little
update it with
jarring to
Bill's-
people when they walk into our restroom for the first time in our green room.
Yeah,
Dolph Lundgren may be experiencing that right now.
it got me the first time. I saw
Might
it.
do your job.
And so
Or do we
I
just
don't
update
think
it with
so.
Bill's new team?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think we just put the Falcon on it when that's announced.
Or we just keep it and not even think about it.
It was a moment in time. You're right.
But
We just let it go.
dude, again, there it is. That's it.
It's a little discerning.
We're very
sometimes.
proud of this here. So should we do hard work works? We should add another.
That should be for number 2.
We can put that in the.
Excuse me.
We can put that in the public bathroom right over here
Hard work works.
for everyone.
Do your job 1, hard work
You know
works.
what? Didn't think we'd go in the toilet humor direction here, but I'll take it. Just returning to the football aspect of it. Thank you.
Sorry, almost missed it.
Good one, Jake.
Thank you. I can't wait to see how it all plays out.
Did you know Robert Kraft's nickname was Thunder?
Is that who he was referring to?
Yeah, I
as
saw people
Thunder?
tweeting it that he called Mr. Kraft Thunder 10 times.
Thundercraft?
That's his nickname.
All
for
right.
Kraft.
I can't say it.
Well, don't say it. Don't go down under or anything like that. No. He did, because he said he's young at heart. He's nicknamed him Thunder.
I have no idea why.
He brings the
Well,
ruckus.
that's obviously the first difference between Mayo and Belichick. First blush is Thunder. He refers to RKK as Thunder, which is okay. Let's go. Let's just see how different it is, and how players who will bridge the regime will handle the difference, and how everything's going to be different. They don't know another way of doing it for the last 24 years.
Right.
And I know Robert Kraft in the departure press conference for Belichick was talking about how Belichick's power within the power structure evolved over time. But it has to have been about, what, 15 years since Belichick last maybe looked at somebody in the draft room and says, you make the call. I don't know.
What do you think?
Or I'm sure he's asked, what do you think? I just don't know who's made the last call, you know. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.
Coaches hired, coaches moving on, transfer portal spinning, same as it ever was. I thought the season was supposed to be over. This is the College Game Day podcast for Wednesday, January 17th. Reese Davis and Pete Thamel here, and even just in the moments before we began recording, Pete, you have transfer portal people blowing up your morning. You can't get a morning of peace, Pete.
Yeah, the Peloton was aspirational this morning, and then it caught wind of Caleb Downs entering the portal. I think he was the best freshman in the sport last year, Reese. He's maybe had the best freshman season of any Alabama defender in history. He led the team in tackles, only freshman to ever do that at Alabama. You really go deep with the scouts. They'll tell you that he's about as sure a thing as you can be to be a top 10 pick. The safety position isn't one that typically goes top 3, 4. Boy, just a special player. Son of Gary Downs, the former NFL running back, Broncos, Giants, Falcons, I believe. Brother of Josh Downs, the very good, productive North Carolina receiver. Nephew of Dre Bly, former Tar Heel assistant coach, former Tar Heel great and NFL great. Yeah, Caleb Downs has all the performance you could ever ask for. Nick Saban, and you could parse Sabanisms maybe better than anyone, Reese, from all your years around him. But he was as effusive about Caleb Downs as I can ever remember him being as a freshman. So the obvious projected landing spots would be Georgia, where he was close to going in high school, and his position coach is now there, T-Rob, and Ohio State was also well in the mix for him in out of high school. But another, you look, there were portal losses. I do feel like Isaiah Bond was a big loss. Caleb Downs for the next 2 years is a huge loss.
Some of that is going to happen, and Alabama fans are going to be frustrated by it. But you won a lot of the recruiting battles simply because, particularly I think for defensive backs, because they had a chance to go and play for not only the greatest coach in the history of college football, but also a well-known guru of secondary play. So, that was a real draw for a lot. And around the program, the name Minka Fitzpatrick was invoked as a freshman, and that is rarefied air in Tuscaloosa, and Caleb Downs was certainly one of those. So there's no question that's a big portal loss for them. But there will probably be more, and that's the way it goes when you change coaches. You're going to have some roster turnover, particularly now that roster turnover is much easier to accomplish, whether it be leaving or bringing guys in. So this is, part of the growing pains. It's going to be bumpy. I think it was an excellent hire by Greg Byrne. I think it is as good of a hire as you possibly could make. And following Nick Saban, that doesn't guarantee success. My point is, if you're going to have to replace Nick Saban, or you don't replace him, if you're going to have to hire the coach who gets the job after Nick Saban, what better place to start than a guy who's now 104-13, 3 championships at a lower level, and just took his team to the national championship game. And is a guy who is coveted in the sport. There were other schools that if openings popped up, he certainly would have been right at the top of the list. And if he is successful at Alabama, the NFL will certainly come calling at some point as well. Couldn't have done much better in terms of hiring someone to follow Saban. But there will be bumps in the road, and the first set of potholes will be the roster. And that's just the way it goes right now. It's just the way it is, so it shouldn't be terribly surprising.
And one of the things that was fortuitous for Caleb, the credit to him, the offense he brought in the recruitment of Michael Penix, was that core at Washington ultimately stayed. Especially if you look in the receiver room, all guys will be top 100 picks this year. Odunze, Jalen Pope, Jalen McMillan. They could have obviously gone anywhere, right? Those guys were going to play anywhere, but they saw the vision, they stuck around, and it paid off, and that's not but we're bearing the lead as we often do here, being talkative and disciplined as we are, because there's so much news happening. Since our Emergency Saban podcast, you have since sat down with Nick Saban. You are the only person, I believe, to have interviewed him at significant length. And I would just be curious your impressions. There's obviously, you do a sit down like that, there's a lot of human interaction that goes beyond the camera. And I'm just curious, your impression of him, his state of mind, where he was, what stuck out to you? That's obviously a interview that will be one of the biggest in your career that you'll ever do, considering the timing of it and the stakes. Just kind of curious your impression.
I've searched for the right word to describe that, and I think I've landed on convinced, meaning that I think he was convinced that it was the right thing for him, and possibly for the program. I'm not so sure I agree with that part of it, because he, had talked about things like, if I had a better coverage, better conveyed assignments better on the 4th and 2 against Michigan, maybe Alabama wins that game. If we'd had a better play call on the play in overtime at the goal line, those types of things that coaches typically beat themselves up over. I mean, you're coming off arguably the best job of coaching in terms of bringing a team along, getting them to the point that they won the SEC championship and into the playoffs. So I would probably differ with Nick over that assessment. But he was convinced, based on what it had taken out of him this year, which was, I think, a little unusual for him and maybe a rarity for him, he was convinced that it was the right thing to do. I think a lot of times you go in and you talk with a coach who has either been relieved of his duties or has decided to retire, and there is a sense of relief or a sense of regret, one of the two. I didn't get either of those feelings from Nick. I got basically convinced that he was doing what he always said he was going to do. If he felt like he couldn't do it the way he always did, then he was going to step away. And and one of the early things, and I guess it's okay for me to share this now, there were rumors flying, as they do when you get a surprise announcement like that there was a problem, some type of health problem for Nick or someone in his family, Miss Terry, whoever it might be, and flying around Alabama circles. And when I went in to talk with him before, I wanted to make sure he had the opportunity to clear that up, because one of the reasons I think he preferred to sit down as opposed to the traditional news conference is he wanted to make sure that he explained his thinking, how he looked at it in a way that was more comfortable to him. In terms of, instead of, I don't know, he just preferred to do it this way. But at first, when I brought up the health thing, he said, well, I'm 72 years old, things, you get to this stage, you don't have the energy. He goes, that's health. And I said, sure, it is. He said, but there are people who are concerned that there's something, like right now, and that there's something imminent that's going on that led to this. And so he was able to put down those rumors and those worries that people had.
So there's no illness. It's just the grind and the gruel of the season.
Yeah, there's no illness. Miss Terry's fine. I'm fine. But it was can you sustain the season? From just a mental grind standpoint. And I, when I was young, I could work till 2 in the morning, get up at 6, and be there the next day and be full of energy and go for it. But when you get a little older, that gets a little tougher, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that.
So I think there was a feeling of being convinced that it was the right thing for him to do, but there was also this sense that he wanted to make sure that his message came from him in his words, and were not only his words, but the way he wanted them presented. And I think he felt more comfortable doing that in a one-on-one situation as opposed to standing at the podium, which he could have done very well, because he, over the course of his career, watching the way he handles
news conference settings now as opposed to the first one I ever saw him handle in East Lansing when he got the Michigan State job.
Oh, wow.
It's a different dude, man.
Yeah,
he's
sure.
he's certainly grown in that area. But I think that's the biggest takeaway is that I wondered, and I asked him, did you feel weird this morning? You're not going to be part of a team really for the first time since you were a little kid, and he acknowledged that would be different, but still seemed convinced that this was the right thing for him.
No, I noticed you asked the health question. I watched the whole interview on YouTube. I encourage our listeners to do it as well because you really get more of the flow than when it's cut up for television. I noticed you asked that question pretty early on. So he has, we've seen coaches retire over the decades, and they hold a platform, right? Like they hold a powerful platform. I'm curious if you got an impression, or maybe you have a guess, over how Nick Saban may use that platform. Because I don't see him just going on a fishing boat and drinking Bud Lights. You know what I mean? Like I feel like he is too driven. I think of like that foot shaking under the chair. Like he's just wired different. How do you feel like he may channel that energy, which is still significant at what, 71 too?
At 72, yeah.
72.
You're right on it, Pete. I don't think he knows the answer to that. I asked him one of the questions in the interview, and I want to give some insight here from behind the scenes too, but your question brought up this. I did ask him how he felt about college football breaking away and sort of being its own entity. And he said, I'm going to research that. And then he went into some things about, the percentages of sports. He wanted to make sure that other opportunities weren't taken away from non-revenue sports. But he said, I want to research that so I'll have a better answer for that. I don't know what the role is. I don't think he does either. I do think that there's going to be an opportunity for him in broadcasting. I certainly, I would love for him to be part of our show. I don't know where that stands. That's not something I negotiate. He's been so good with us over the years.
They run that by me.
I hope they run it by me.
That's a joke, by the way. That's sarcasm for those not fluent. They will run nothing by me.
But usually it's sort of done by then. But I think it'd be great if that's what he chooses to do, and perhaps that will be part of the platform, but I don't think that will be it exclusively. I think the powers that be would be wise to use him as a sounding board, and we've always talked about this notion of a commissioner in college football. I think that's so far off and so not far afield at the moment. That may come to fruition, but I don't think that's going to come to fruition during a feasible timeline for Nick, although he would be perfect for it. Because the one thing that has always struck me about him, and was sort of still reiterated in that time that we visited last week, was that he's hyper-competitive. He cares mostly about winning in his team, but he does care about the bigger value of the sport. People made fun of him with all of the, is this what we want football to be stuff. And I understand why they did, because you're only looking at it through the focus of, how is he trying to help Alabama win? But there's a lot of authenticity and legitimacy in those questions that he asks, and things that, that he thinks aren't good for the players. The unfettered free agency right now. I really believe, and it's easy to be cynical about it, but I really believe he thinks that's not best for the players. He thinks getting money is best for them, and sharing, in the various revenues, that is best. But that there are aspects of the framework right now that don't help them long term. I think he would like to be part of the rest of those answers. But I think he's also still in the process of, to use his word, researching what that would be. I think some of it will be in broadcasting. I think some of it will probably be a little more behind the scenes in an advisory capacity. And there might come a day in the next few years where he becomes front and center on things like that. And I do believe that that would be a role that he would take on willingly.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly has the gravitas to do it. The notion of czar comes up, and this is like a long conversation for a May podcast, but I've always a belief, like, if the AFC made twice as much money as the NFC, football wouldn't have one commissioner, right? And so until there's some sort of more level playing field and not power needed by the leagues dictated by money, it's hard to have one person in charge, because that would mean the leader's acquiescing power. So
and that doesn't happen. I've said not about this situation. I've said this
just
about
in
many
general.
things. Find a situation in life where people go, "Hey, I think I'd like to give up some of my power." You know what I mean, that
Yeah.
really doesn't happen very often. You know,
That happens right after they want to give up some of their money.
right? Exactly. Precisely.
And the inequities in the system now, we call it a power 2, and then it's probably a little staggered from there. Like, those aren't solving themselves. There's not some financial magic bullet, because the power 2 have established themselves as twice as valuable, whatever, use your percentages, as valuable as the others. And therefore, some sort of neat, tidy 68 team, whatever, something that somebody can write a long blog about and would make perfect sense in a world of financial equity, does not work in our current world of financial inequity. And if anything, we've seen the inequities grow. I mean, look at Alabama's staff hirings, right? Like they pillaged 2 Group of 5 schools. I haven't had a coach about one of those Group of 5 openings say to me, like, that's 5 years ago I might have gone after that job, but now people are leaving that job for like a similar job that they have now. Like, it's interesting to see the tide turn a little bit, that some of those Group of 5 jobs maybe aren't viewed as aspirational, because your best players immediately go to the Power 5 for more money. It's just and you don't have the NIL to keep them, so you're now like a AAA manager. You're not you're not there, and that's not a complaint by me. It's just an observation. It's just where the system is right now.
One quick thing on that, because it's interesting. I was asked about Alabama's staff on a show just before we started, and it's funny, you and I haven't even spoken about this, and our thoughts are similar. It's changed the coaching trajectory thing, and Cole Kubelik was the one who asked me about it, and he brought up Sean Lewis, and I remember being really surprised that Sean would leave a head coaching job to go be a coordinator at Colorado, and the same for Kane Womack, and really for Mo Lindquist, who I told the story on Cole's show that Lindquist, who I don't know well, but I know someone who has talked to him about a job a couple of years ago, and said that guy is going to be a great head coach at the upper level at some point. Can't hire him now because of the limited track record in that set, but he's a guy to keep an eye on. Now, maybe
he's
Buffalo,
impressive.
Yeah, maybe
He's really
Buffalo's a little up and down, whatever, but early on. But those jobs are difficult, and now you have 2 guys who have decided that the best way forward for their career path is to step away from running their own team and working with Kalen DeBoer and running a side of the ball. It's a pretty fascinating time in the sport in that regard too.
Yeah, there is a yawning gap, and before we dive into it and get off our script, we're still on our opening script here. You did also sit down with the other college football coach, who is in the highest end of the news cycle right now, national champion Jim Harbaugh, interviewee of the Chargers, interviewee of the Falcons in recent days. You spent some time with him post-title game there. Walk us through a little bit of that interaction, Reese, which we did not get to on the emergency podcast because we were Nick-focused, and what vibes you got. We had talked going in on one of our pods about asking the question, asking the hard question. It's sort of something all journalists face, the proverbial Bonnie Bernstein to Roy Williams question, right? Like that that we've all had to raise our hand and ask, or tilt the microphone and ask. How did that go with Jim? And when you left him that morning in Houston, what was your feeling of that? Where the weather vane was pointing?
Most of this is gut instinct. I think he's leaving if he gets the right situation. But it wasn't like he walked in there going, I've done my job and now I can't wait to get back to the NFL. I mean, he was pretty much the quintessential Harbaugh in terms of the way he answered it. Going through, Adrian did a great job transcribing part of the interview and highlighting some things as part of the podcast. But I tried to get to some creative ways to answer it, because if you ask Pete, are you going to the NFL the next morning? Well, we we know, and you would have tipped me off if there was an imminent deal that had been done.
And the logistics don't even work because they have to interview 4 or 5 people. Like, it's not even feasible for that to happen immediately.
Right. So, if you ask that, that directly, and it may make you feel like a tough guy, but you're not getting anything.
Sure.
So I tried to find some ways to get to it, and he actually opened a door by talking about the criticism and what you say you go back to work. So then I said, okay, what work do you find to do next? And then, ask him, how making his alma mater a champion impacted that. And he, I'm looking at the transcript here, and he says, well, everybody says that. I really don't know. And so I asked him, well, how do you think that will evaluate or impact your thinking when you evaluate it? And he gave me the 24-hour rule. I'm going to make it a 48-hour rule. I'm living right now. I asked him about the time frame. He said, I don't have an answer to that for you right now. So he was very cordial and friendly, and knew the questions were coming, and was really good about it.
How does being a champion and restoring your alma mater to a championship status impact decisions you will make? Because you're going to have opportunities. And
everybody says that,
Yeah.
Everybody says that. I don't know, Who knows that?
But how does it impact your thinking about how you will evaluate it?
I don't know. I mean, we could peel back the onion and, different layers of emotion, and what are you going to think, and how are you think? All I know is this. I'm living right now. This is incredible.
There's always a question that you left on the table that, and this was just a miss by me. I'd love to make somebody say, oh, I thought, no, the follow-up question that I missed and that I regret. What would it take to get you to leave Michigan? That's a pretty basic question that I missed, and I wish I had asked it that way. I do take solace in this, Pete. Knowing Jim as you and I do, I would have gotten the same answer to that question had I asked it that I got to some of the others, which also would have been very similar to the answer I would have gotten if I'd said, Jim, what do you think about the move from horse-drawn carriages to modes of transportation by horseless carriage? So it all would have been similar, but I do wish I'd asked it. I wish I'd asked it that way, but it was all the 48-hour rule. And right now, the one thing that did happen after the interview was over, we were standing up and you were taking some pictures, and Blake Corum and Will Johnson were there too. And I
Did you tell Will Johnson about your man crush or not?
I did. He knows.
You're always hesitant to admit your man crushes, Reese.
No,
God knows.
yeah. Well, you never want to meet your heroes, Pete. They can let you down. But no, Will knows. Will knows I'm a fan. But I told I know it. I told Jim afterwards. I said, look, man. I said, I know how you answered the questions, and I said, I know you've got decisions to make. I said, I'm a college football guy. I said, I wish you well, whatever. I said, but I hope you stay. I said, I think, just your personality and demeanor and everything, I think you're good for the sport. And I said, and I hope you decide to stay. But if you don't, I wish you well. And, he appreciated that.